everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the KnicksCast channel. It's been a bit since we've gone live. I was last live with Dylan for the Knicks-Sixers game, but it's only appropriate that we have an all-star cast for a playoff preview. So I'll start off with the newest guest on our channel, right down below, from the Hot Hand Theory podcast. We previously had Jeff on, is XJ. He also does some great work with Knicks Film School. Also, Hot Hand Theory just released a new episode previewing the Knicks Pistons series. Check it out. YouTube is pinned down below. My diagonal, I guess I would call it. Can't point the right way exactly. We got Dylan from Fireside Knicks and Empire Sports Media. He's been a current member of the channel on and off in terms of the game streams. But to my left or right, however you think about it, is Donald Stewart from PFN and Let's Talk Knicks. So in that very order, we'll go from XJ to Dylan to Donald. Quick introduction and just opening thoughts.
Yo, can everybody hear me okay?
All good.
All right, sweet. Yeah, my name's XJ. Appreciate you having me on, Luca. Good to be on with both of you guys, Dylan and Donald. Excited to break down this series. We've been talking about it all week, obviously, and we'll continue to do that until the ball tips on Saturday. But yeah, looking forward to it. I think there's a lot to break down and excited to do that.
Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people who are on this channel know who I am by now. I've been on with Luca so many times, but for those who don't, I'm Dylan. I'm with Fireside Knicks, Empire Sports Media. I'm excited to talk about the Knicks in the playoff series with XJ and, of course, Donald once again, back on the stream with you a second time. I'm excited to talk about it. We got an exciting series against Detroit, so should be a fun one.
Donald.
Salute everybody. Salute Dylan. Salute XJ. Well, man, Luca, good to see you, man. Looking forward to breaking down this series. The Knicks have to be tough in this series. They need to play tough. They need to play scrappy. That's my opening key. They need to be really aggressive because the Pistons is not an ideal matchup for them because the Pistons love to come out and play in transition, which isn't the Knicks' strength this year. And the Knicks need to show a little bit more balls, just a little bit more cojones this because they haven't really shown it this year. They did last year. They need to show it again this year. I think they will.
Okay, so great opening thoughts from everybody. And then before I get to everybody's thoughts on the season, I like to say, if you guys haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the KnicksCast channel. We'll be doing game streams throughout the playoffs, turn the notification bells so you want to go live or drop a new video. Also, everybody's links, as I said, down below. We got XJ's links to his X, ironically, Twitter, Hot Hand Theory. I think Jeff's link is down below as well. He was a great guest. We got Dylan's links in terms of his X and his Fireside Knicks channel. We also got Donald's X link in the chat as well. But I'm going to go in reverse order this time. We'll have obviously different opinions, some similar, I guess. But we'll start with Donald. Donald, what were your thoughts on this season, how it panned out thus far, coming off of last season? And I know you and I have talked ad nauseum about how the season has gone, agreements, disagreements, all these different things. Like, you can also give your concerns and reasons for optimism regarding this series and just throughout the whole playoffs. I know we're previewing the Pistons Knicks, but still, it's more of a broader spectrum too.
So how I feel about the regular season, could I say they slightly underachieved? Because I would have liked to have seen them do better against teams that were above 500. Their record against teams that are above 500 is disappointing. They looked overmatched against the Celtics, against Cleveland, at times against the Pistons. So they need to be a little tougher, as I mentioned earlier. They need to be a little tougher. So when I say underachieved, yeah, they won one more game than they did last year. But just with the talent and the personnel, I was kind of hoping that even if they didn't win more games, that they'd be closer and maybe sneak one or two off the Celtics or Cleveland, just for us to feel a little bit more confident about matching up with them. So that would be one of my little minor concerns. Another thing I was concerned about is Tibbs. Now, listen, I'm a big fan of Tibbs. I felt that he didn't have the greatest year coaching because I would have loved to have seen him use Tyler Kolek more. he seems to really strongly distaste this guy. Because if you look at his assist to turnover ratio, it's freaking phenomenal. And what I loved about Kolek is every time he was on the court, he got Bridges in really good positions to knock down open shots, and Bridges just looked like he came alive with Kolek beside him. Just having a pass first point guard that just knew how to put the ball right where they needed to be. Now I know he's not the most athletic guy. I get that, and I get that obviously he's not the greatest defender in the world. But I just felt that it was really imperative that we developed him more, considering where we're at with the luxury tax. We kind of wanted to develop him more, just so that you feel really confident going into next year, and maybe having him as a possible playoff rotation piece. But that's not really a possibility now. So that was maybe another thing that I would be concerned about. On the positive side, OG Anunoby had a career year. I thought he was freaking awesome, and he even got better when Brunson went down. So he just took. I just love that he took responsibility to lead the team when our best player went down. He just led the way on both ends of the court. So I thought he was awesome. I thought Cat had a really good first year as a Knick. I kind of was worried about whether he was the right fit at times, but not this year. He blew me away with he was just constantly doing his very, very best. So I think New York is a great fit for him. I know how much he's a big Knick fan and stuff, and I think he just loves being a Knick. So I think he's going to take his game from strength to strength. So I was actually pretty happy with Cat. Brunson, obviously all NBA. So there was a lot of positives there. Mitch surprised me that he just, as soon as he got back, he felt like he never left. I was really happy with that. So there's a lot of positives as well. Bridges was probably the only person in the rotation that I'm a little bit on. I'm not sure whether he's the right fit, but we'll get into that another time. But yeah, as I say, I think we'll get through Detroit. I think we're saving our best for last, but much beyond Detroit, I'm not sure about that. But I think we'll get through Detroit, but it's not an ideal series for us because matchup-wise, not ideal. But we'll get down in the X's and O's as the podcast progresses.
Absolutely. I just want to add real quick with Donald's point, because as Donald said, he loves Tyler Kolek. I think some Knicks fans envision this is not like a major story. I just want to add that's some. I guess maybe some people saw campaign as that kind of stopgap while Tyler Kolek develops in the G League, and then he'd eventually come up to the NBA with, as Donald mentioned, with the Knicks luxury tax and all the second apron stuff, but. Just a little minor point there. At least some people thought he would be in the rotation sooner or later. Maybe next year, hopefully. But Dylan.
Yeah, to kind of second Donald's points and stuff like that. First off, most of what he said I pretty much agree with. Cat had a great year. McHale kind of had that up and down season. His second half was a lot better than the first half, but still wish he played better against the good teams, as Donald said. Brunson, of course, was Brunson all year. Of course, we missed those 15 games with him out, but luckily they stayed afloat thanks to the other guys stepping up, such as you said, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, etc., etc. I kind of want to dive into the playoff series and look at it a little bit from there, because I think for the most part with the regular season, they kind of just coasted, right? And, that's kind of like a good and bad thing. They were 0-10 against the top 3 teams in the league, which is not ideal, but I think the mindset from day one was this team is built for the postseason, not the regular season. I think that was their mindset all along. I feel like they kind of just were letting these games go by and then really I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they're going to kind of really lock in on the playoffs. So that's why I want to touch on that, because Detroit is not a pushover. Detroit handled them 3 times out of the 4 matchups this year, and I think 2 of them were at the Garden. So, they're a decent team. They're one of the bigger NBA stories this season, one of the biggest turnarounds that really I've seen in quite a while. I mean, you go from, 14 wins last season to 44 this year in a playoff berth, not even in the play-in, to the playoffs. That's remarkable. Credit to them. They played their ass off this year. They did great. Cade Cunningham took a huge leap, of course, and so did all of their other role players. But, I do think the Knicks should still be heavily favored in this series, especially because the Knicks are fully healthy this time. They just have more talent than the Pistons. They do. It's that simple. I like the Pistons. I'm not saying they're a bad team at all. They're a great team, but they have no playoff experience really outside of like some of their aging vets like Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. Guys, not their main guys, right? Their main guys don't have a ton of playoff experience. The Knicks, meanwhile, all their guys have playoff experience pretty much. Mikal Bridges has been to the finals before. Karl-Anthony Towns has been to the playoffs a few times. And of course, Jalen Brunson a few times with the Knicks and the Mavericks. All that stuff, So we know that this team's built for the playoffs right now. We know that these guys are ready for it. What I really am concerned about, I think everyone can kind of agree with me on this, the defense. There's the defensive struggles on the perimeter. And of course, when Cat is on the floor, the inside defense is bad too. So what I'm curious to see is, are they going to have Cat and Mitchell Robinson play together often? I don't think they're going to make a change to the starting lineup. I agree, they kind of have to. But I don't think they're going to make a change to the starting lineup just because they've had that starting five together pretty much all year. I don't think they're going to want to kind of mess up that continuity. But I will say I do think we're going to see a lot of Cat and Mitch together. I know Tom Thibodeau talked about it earlier, and he kind of floated the idea of it a little bit. He never committed to anything because, Tom Thibodeau never commits to anything to the media, so he's never going to say if he's going to actually do something or not, which is smart. You don't want to expose your game plan to the other team. But either way, I do think we're going to see a lot of that, and I think we should. I think really if we see those two together on the floor, we'll see better results. I think we'll see better production from Cat, and I think Mitch will also kind of have a more impactful role as well. His offensive rebounding, the defense, the stuff that the Knicks had been missing for most of the year when he was out for nearly 60 games with the ankle injury. Now he's back and he looks healthier this time. As the season went on and as he kept getting more action, he looked more like Mitchell Robinson. Of course, when he first came back, he was still kind of a step slow, which I think everyone should have expected. If anyone thought that off rip he was going to be just like as he was last year, that's outrageous. It was gonna take a minute for him to kind of get his conditioning back and get his rhythm back, but he looked a lot healthier in the last few games of the season. I think he's fully ready to go now. I don't think he needs any more restrictions at this point in year two, which is a very good thing. So I do think we're going to see him a lot more, and we should. There's other things I can get into about this stuff, but I do want to give XJ an opportunity to kind of jump in on this, so go for it, man.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I definitely agree with both of your points, like a ton of both of your points. I'll make my thoughts on the regular season pretty quick so we can kind of dive into the Pistons series. On the regular season, to me, it was a frustrating season. And it's weird to say that for a Knicks season where they win over 50 games, but we have to remember that preseason, the Knicks had an over-under of 53.5 games this season. So they also had the third best odds to win the championship behind the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So this was a season where the Knicks had high expectations. This is not a season where you can say, hey, they won 50 games. This is great. We're not used to being here. To me, they had some serious expectations going into this year, and I think they slightly underperformed those expectations. I think that's okay. I don't think it's a big deal. It's not like they were way off or way worse than they should have been. My biggest problem with that is that if you're going to underperform expectations, I'd love to see some experimentation so that when the playoffs start, you're ready to kind of break out different approaches, different tactics, different styles, depending on who your matchup is.
Great point.
So, I appreciate it. Yeah. So that's the biggest issue for me is the lack of experimentation. And I think it's going to play a factor here in this Pistons series. For instance, I do think Cade Cunningham is one of the very best playmakers in the entire NBA, and he thrives on pick and rolls. If we dive into the numbers a little bit for the Pistons have the most screen assists per game and total in the entire NBA. The Pistons constantly screen. It is all different guys screening for Cade Cunningham. It's their centers constantly screening for Cade Cunningham. Isaiah Stewart, when he's on the court, I feel like all he does is screen for Cade Cunningham. He's just like screening and rescreening. And so the Knicks are going to have to figure out how to deal with that. You cannot just play exclusively drop defense against a team that's screening as much as the Pistons do, with Cade Cunningham as the playmaker, who is one of the best, if not the best playmaker in the entire NBA already at his age. So to me, you have to throw in some switches. You have to have some situations where you have a guy like Deuce McBride on the ball. Although he has a size disadvantage, he is the best guy at navigating screens on the team. So you have to be able to throw some different stuff at this guy to slow him down, because you honestly can slow down the Pistons offense. They don't have a great offense. They're one-dimensional. Cade is the most heliocentric player in the entire league. And to me, it's just a matter of different things, throwing different things at him, slowing him down, showing him different looks. And the Knicks don't practice different looks. The Knicks play pretty exclusively one way. I do think the double big lineup is going to help. I don't think we'll see it a ton, unfortunately. And I do think a ton of Deuce McBride minutes would be really helpful for the one fact that I mentioned. And I don't think we're going to see that either. So
I've literally got that as a note, bro.
Reasons.
XJ, I've literally got that as a note. We need to see a ton of Deuce. So I completely agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's my biggest concern. I mean, I definitely have more thoughts. One thing I want to throw at all three of you guys here. One of the biggest issues, I think a lot of people are expecting Mikal Bridges to start on Cade Cunningham. One of the biggest issues that stands out to me, especially in the data, there is one guy who is currently the worst guy at navigating screens in the entire NBA. Can you guess who that player is? Mikal Bridges. It's shocking. You wouldn't believe it. According to B-Ball Index, in their metric, screen navigation, which measures how well you stay attached on screens, how well you contest shots, how well you lower the opponent's shot quality coming off of screens, he is the worst in the entire NBA. Not one of the worst, not at the very bottom. He is worse at screen navigation than LaMelo Ball. I love LaMelo Ball. If you're worse than LaMelo Ball at navigating screens, that is a problem. So
because he hates contact, bro. He hates it. He wants nothing to do with it. No contact.
He is not staying tight on those screens. He doesn't have the wiggle that he used to have when he was a little bit younger. And that's a huge problem to me. So I think you get exposed if you put Mikal Bridges on Cade Cunningham too much. And I think that's kind of where they're going to go. I'd love to be wrong and see them go in a different direction, but that's a big concern for me.
I mean, yeah, you mentioned the screening for Cade Cunningham. I agree with you, XJ, in total, because like you obviously have the better data than I do, but just seeing like how badly the Knicks played screens with Mikal Bridges this year, it's just like the Pistons, and we'll obviously break in the strengths and weaknesses and what we can exploit and all these different things, but it's like the opponent is going to be targeting Mikal Bridges in screens. They're going to target Brunson and Towns in the pick and roll. That's going to be huge. To me, it's like, I mean, we'll obviously break this down as well. Bridges, you could probably throw on one of their movement shooters, whether you throw him on Tim Hardaway. I would leave Brunson on Asar Thompson unless they try to get Asar Thompson involved, because Thompson's not a great shooter, and he is probably one of the two lone non-shooters in the lineup outside of Jalen Duren. Obviously, Tobias Harris is a thing, but I would probably put OG. But even like, as I'll break into my quick regular season thoughts in about a second. Like, to me, if I were to start Deuce McBride, Cade would be my matchup for him, because Deuce is a ball hound. He's so aggressive. As you said, XJ, he's a great screen navigator. He'll get up into the jersey. He's physical. And again, Cade is 6'6", Deuce is 6'2". Size advantage doesn't matter for Deuce. He's going to go right at him. He's our best point of attack defender. So that's what I got to say about that. But regular season, I agree with XJ. I agree with Donald. Very frustrating. The 0-10 record against some of the top teams like the Cavs, the Thunder, the Celtics was worrying, especially that most of them were blowouts, especially with the team that we have. I believe this is the most talent they've had in how many years in terms of the Knicks. The losses against the Lakers, I thought, were very concerning as well. Again, the Lakers are not the number one team, but you like to see them beat them, especially that overtime game in LA was definitely frustrating. Pistons, definitely, the Knicks could have definitely taken more of those. Even just some games earlier in the season. Remember the Chicago game where Jalen Brunson had that shot go in and out on that turnaround fadeaway jumper? Like, I think one of the biggest problems with the Knicks, before I break away to the individual series, the Knicks seem to just not do the little things. And the little like mechanical adjustments, and this is a matter of coaching too. It's not just coaching; it's also the players. It goes hand in hand. It's just they don't do the little things done. They still make silly mistakes. They get into foul trouble. They foul beyond the 3-point line. They don't read when a screen is coming. When a screen is, it's just the little things. The Knicks. Well, I don't know how much time the Knicks will have to really get into that and say, you know what, this has to be really worked on. How much can you work on in a matter of 10 days is the question, or less than that, should I say? That's my biggest thing.
Attention to detail, bro. As you point out, attention to detail. Attention
to detail. Absolutely right. So I was originally going to do individual regular season awards, but we can move on to the series itself. So Pistons versus Knicks. How would you rank? And you could go to 5, you could go to 7, you could go to 10 if you want. How would you rank the best players in this series? I'm going to shoot to Dylan first.
Was not expecting to be shot here first, but I got you. So, looking at the at the Pistons and Knicks series, of course, obviously we're gonna be watching Brunson and Cade the most. Those are the two top players in this series. I don't think anyone is questioning that, right? Now, what I do think here, this playoff series, Cade needs to kind of prove a little bit here. Now, I know he's young and it's his first playoff series, but there's gonna be a lot of eyes on him. A lot of people are gonna be looking at him and seeing, okay, what can he do in the postseason? What can he do here? How is he going to handle his first true playoff setting? How is he going to handle the Garden in the playoffs, which is a very hostile environment to say the least? Knicks fans are pretty, rowdy. They're arguably the best fans in the NBA. I wouldn't even say arguably, probably the best fans in the NBA. So when you look at it like that, there's going to be a lot that we're going to be really kind of figuring out about the Pistons and seeing if that, they kind of just rode that regular season high, or if they're really about it, if they're really kind of ready for this playoff, if they're ready to see, ready for this type of energy. Because sure, the Knicks kind of, as we, just mentioned a few moments ago, maybe they kind of underachieved a little bit. Maybe we expected more out of this team, but maybe we also set our expectations very high when in reality, this was a brand new team with two brand new starters, and they kind of needed to figure out how to gel for an entire season. And for a lot of teams, that takes an entire season to do. So, we can look at it from that way, but we can also look at it from, oh, well, these guys are very talented. They should know how to play with each other by now, blah, 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 blah. But either way, looking at the Pistons series, of course, like I said earlier, they're not a pushover. They're a very solid group. They play physical. They play hard. And a lot of people criticize the Knicks for not playing physical this year, which is reasonable. There were many times where I felt like they were kind of just settling, where they were kind of just rushing shots, lots of one-and-done possessions, not really attacking the basket, or as XJ said, horrible in pick-and-roll defense as well, drop coverage, all that stuff. So there's a lot of different ways that we kind of need to look at and say, okay, well, they need to fix this. They need to do that. No team is perfect. Unfortunately, the Knicks are not a perfect team at all. And really, at this point, I think you could even argue the expectations are lower for the Knicks now. You could argue they're kind of like the underdog. You kind of went from, as you said earlier, one of the favorites to win the title opening the season to, oh, well, everyone's kind of just counting them out already, because even if they do beat Detroit, they're already saying they're just going to lose to Boston in like 4 or 5 games. So really, I think the Knicks need to just take care of business against Detroit. And when I say take care of business, I don't mean you got to sweep these guys. The Pistons are a 6th seed. They're a good team. Let's not, get ahead of ourselves. I don't think the Knicks have to sweep these guys. But if this series goes to 7, I would be concerned. I would be, because I think the Knicks are definitely a lot more talented than Detroit. As I said, I think they're just a better team than Detroit. I think you can even argue they're better coached, even though a lot of people don't like Tom Thibodeau. I think they're still better coached than Detroit. So either way, whatever happens, I think the Knicks just need to take care of business here. I don't think we should be looking at a 7-game series here. I really think the Knicks should handle these guys in 5 games, honestly. That's what I would predict it as, Knicks in 5 here. If it goes to 6, I can see that. I would understand it. I mean, Pistons fans, they showed out in that last game in the regular season a week or 2 ago when they were really feeling that energy. So if it goes to 6 games, I understand they have a superstar, they have good fans, good players, all that stuff, but really the Knicks need to win this in like 5 games. I think that's what they need to do. I think they need to just show out, show who they really are, and show off their talent. You have 2 all-star starters on your team. And you have an all-NBA level defense player in OG Anunoby, and of course some of the other top role players in the league like Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and and a solid bench player in Deuce McBride. You have good pieces. These aren't like horrible pieces to have. So the Knicks need to really just show that they're the better team, and take care of business. It is that simple. We can dive into how all the matchups and stuff like that, and we will do that as the show goes on. But to simplify everything, handle this team in 5 games. Beat these guys in 5 games. You are the better team to Detroit. Beat these guys. Move on to round 2. Worry about round 2 then, and move on from there. That's really all I got to say about it, because I think it's really that simple.
Yeah, it's definitely one series at a time, and I got to ask Donald because he's going to resonate with this as well. I talked about the little things and we just talked about contact. You ever see Mikal Bridges dive for a loose ball?
He did once. He never got it, but he never does.
I'm not trying to rag on the guy, but
you can even just look at his free throw numbers and really tell, and that'll tell you how aggressive he is. Because I think he averaged like less than 2 free throws a night. So
yeah, he was averaging like 1.1 until Brunson got hurt, and then it raised. He doubled it after that, but then once Brunson came back, it went right back down to.
Well, because when Bridges drives, he doesn't take the layup; he takes the fadeaway midi. Which I mean, to his credit, he makes it more than half the time. But That's why he's not getting to the line. He's not aggressive.
That's not an optimal
He's
shot.
frightened of contact.
No. Of course not. Of course
And
not. It's
I
not
think
optimal. No.
I think that's a reason, partly why I'm a little my ceiling for this team is a little low, is because he's not that aggressive, and he's meant to be your primary on-ball defender, and he's not aggressive. He doesn't fight through screens, and I thought his defense took a step back this year, but we're going a little bit off course. Look at your original question is the kind of players that you want to keep an eye out on, and
I was saying top 5. I was saying rank your top 5 or top 7 or top 10 players in this series. You could give a list.
well, I would say I don't exactly have a ranking, but I'll say the players to keep an eye out on, right? Like potential X factors, potential players to keep an eye out on. Beasley's one of them, and this is a key for the Knicks. They absolutely need to rotate. They haven't done a great job of rotating this year. They have to rotate as a team, as a unit, be well coached, well drilled, because Beasley is 52% shooting threes from the corner. He is a monster from the corner. You have to be physical with him. That's not exactly Bridges' forte. So I want OG to be, getting out there or do whatever. We just need to be really aggressive, physical. Don't allow him open shots from the corner because he will knock them down at a 52% clip. So what's one guy to keep an eye out on? Beasley. That's one. Stewart is another one for the Pistons because he stopped Cat from going into the paint altogether in that last matchup. Cat was terrified of going anywhere near the paint once Stewart was on him. That has to change. So whether we need to do a better job with Brunson feeding Cat in the post, maybe he can do a sky hook, maybe he can do a nice post-up move, whatever, but he needs to establish him in the paint without falling over and without being afraid. We need Cat to dominate. We need Cat to knock down some threes on top of the key, absolutely, because that's his bread and butter, but also get in the paint too, and not be afraid of Stewart. Stewart was excellent in that last matchup against the Knicks. So was Duren. I'm a big fan of Jalen Duren. I think Jalen Duren is an absolute beast. In fact, I've been advocating that we should have drafted him. And I stand by that. I've always been a big fan of Duren's game, and he's really taken off for the Pistons. And they're a big-body team, man. They're big. And the Knicks are small, apart from Mitchell Robinson. And that's why it's not an ideal matchup for us. So, absolutely, the Knicks need to be aggressive. So those are some guys that I mentioned there. Obviously, we know about Cade Cunningham. That goes without saying, so we don't need to mention that. Josh Hart, for me, is an X factor for the Knicks. Because his jump shot looks a little broken right now. He looks afraid of it. And when he's getting open threes, he's either passing it up or he's bricking them. And this is not a disrespect to Josh Hart because I'm a big Josh Hart fan. Like, I'm mega Josh Hart fan. I absolutely adore the guy. But he's an X factor because he does need to knock down his shots. He needs to trust his shot. But also, he's that scrappy dude that we need. Because we need to make this series scrappy. We need to be fighting. And Josh Hart is the absolute dude for that. He needs to be getting in there and being scrappy, fighting for loose balls, fighting through screens, doing all the dirty work. We need Josh Hart to do all the dirty work. And that's why I have him as kind of an X factor, because he's the kind of player that can really turn the tide in our favor. So those are like, and then of course Deuce McBride is a big one. Deuce McBride, we need mega Deuce McBride minutes. And also another one that I'm going to rank as vital to us is Mitchell Robinson. I've been thinking about this because I know that Tibbs is never going to have the game one starting with Mitchell Robinson at the 5. It's never going to happen. But if he has Mitchell Robinson play major minutes at the 5 with Cat beside him, we can really mitigate a lot of the threats that the Pistons have. We need to play bigger because the Pistons love to go out and run in transition. They are first in points for position of steals. So a way to mitigate that is to have Mitchell Robinson in there at the 5, because all the Pistons are going to do is target Cat anyway, especially in drop. So Having Mitch in there, he's always in the 96th, 97th percentile in rebounding, offensive rebounding. He's going to be in there in the boards. You need that physicality. That'll stop transition plays, steals, all the stuff like that. Mitchell Robinson can stop all that. They can stop Cat being targeted at the 5. Love Cat on the offensive end. Don't like him at the 5. He is a terrible defensive center. It's just not even questionable for me. I think he's a terrible defensive center. Mitchell Robinson sorts all that out, and I want Cat playing the 4 because how did the Timberwolves use him? Yes, Johnny, that's right. The correct answer is he played him at the 4, right? Because that's where he's best at, because he can't defend the 5. You put a big guy like Gobert beside him, then he can do all the dirty work, and Cat can dominate on the offensive end. That's what we need to do. We need to stop trying to reinvent the wheel with Cat. Cat isn't really a guy that you can win championships with at the 5. But at the 4, yes. So for me, I would definitely start Mitch at the 5, but I kind of know Tibbs, and he won't do it. So just as long as they have Mitch doing major minutes at the 5 with Cat beside him, then I'll be okay with that, because Mitch will help mitigate a lot of the threat that the Pistons have. And just to pick up on Dylan, one last thing. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that the Pistons are inexperienced, so we can take advantage of that, because you could also say the Pistons have nothing to lose, and that can be just as scary. They can play without any fear, and to be honest, I saw them play in Madison Square Garden. They didn't look afraid at all. So if you want the
playoffs is a different environment, though. But I do hear you.
A big player for us is actually Madison Square Garden. We need to be dominant at home. We weren't really that dominant at home for much of this year, kind of, especially against good teams. So I think that's a big one for us, Madison Square Garden.
All right,
Yeah,
so definitely. XJ, you can either break down players that key to the series, or you could name the X factor, or you can name also the top players in this series. You could feel free.
Yeah, I think I'll do a little bit of all that. So I'll say, I mean, to me, the top players are obviously going to be Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Karl Anthony Towns, and then I'd have OG Anunoby. So I mean, you're already talking about we're talking about a talent disparity. We're saying the Knicks have 3 of the 4 best players in the series, and I'd imagine everybody here would at least agree with that to some extent. Something that I think that is interesting is that if I was to go next, I probably would say somebody that I think nobody else here would say. So I'm curious if we could have some disagreement here. I think Asar Thompson is the next guy for me. Asar Thompson, I think, is an extremely underrated key piece to this entire thing. Obviously, he is going to be the guy hounding Jalen Brunson. He is an elite perimeter defender, already one of the top handful of perimeter defenders in the league, in the world at this point. If there's a guy that you want to hound Jalen Brunson, I would build Asar Thompson. He can get over screens. He's obviously hyper athletic, can defend shots from on the perimeter, is so quick, has amazing recovery speed, can completely block off shots at the rim, even by bigs. He's really incredible. And then you might think of him as a weakness for the Pistons offensively. And I think he is sort of to some extent because of his non-shooting. But I think what maybe some people don't realize is what happens when Asar Thompson's on the court for the Pistons. What happens is that the Pistons just pound the paint at a ridiculous rate. His on-off, actually, in terms of frequency of shots that the Pistons take at the rim, is plus 7.1%. So that means they take way more shots at the rim when he's on the court, because he's an elite cutter. He's a great interior passer, so he makes great passes with Jalen Duren. And he's an elite offensive rebounder. We as Knicks fans, think of Josh Hart as, a great offensive rebounder as a wing. And he is. Hart has a 6.5% offensive rebound rate as a wing. That's incredible. Asar Thompson has a 9.2% offensive rebound rate as a wing, as a guy who's, around the same size as Josh Hart, definitely slighter build than Josh Hart. He is clearly the best non-big offensive rebounder in the entire NBA. The only other player that could compete with him there is his twin brother. So even though he's a worse shooter than Josh Hart, and a worse playmaker for sure. Josh Hart's a better shooter and playmaker. He's so viable offensively because of everything he does and how he shifts that team to being an interior dominant team. And then on the defensive end, he might be the best defender in the series, and that's a series that has OG Anunoby in it, and Mitchell Robinson and guys like that. So to me, I think that's a guy to watch out for that is not getting a lot of thought in Knicks fans' minds right now. But I think he's going to be really key to the series. If the Knicks aren't able to exploit him when they're on offense, he is going to create havoc for Jalen Brunson, and he's basically the only guy that could have a chance in the world to slow down Jalen Brunson. So that's something I think that we need to watch out for.
Yeah, great points all around, but I'm not going to necessarily rank the top players, and you guys did a great job with that. If I had to pick an X factor for the Knicks, I'm actually going to say Mikal Bridges. I think he's like the kind of make or break player this team has. Obviously, we mentioned his screen navigation's been pretty poor. Is he going to somehow have to get better at that for this series unless the Knicks have another plan to get around that? Also, just, Mikal Bridges having a shot and being consistently fed the ball. Obviously not his number one option, but with the bench, I think Tibbs is going to need to leverage those minutes with Karl Anthony Towns. And we'll obviously break into the lineups thing as well, which I have a segment for which lineups the Knicks need to optimize. And I know we talked about the Cat and Mitchell Robinson lineup, maybe some spacing lineups eventually we'll talk about as well. But Mikal Bridges, I think, is the biggest X factor for the Knicks. For the Pistons, I don't want to say Malik Beasley, but it's kind of like the truth, honestly. Not that I kind of done poor research on that. I can't lie to you, because Beasley has just harmed the Knicks for pretty much the entire season, especially from the corners. Even the last game at Madison Square Garden, they were doubling Cade constantly. And then there was this one rotation where Tim Hardaway had an open three at the top of the key, passes the ball to the corner. He was wide open, though, and he could hit the three. Passes to Malik Beasley in the corner. The rotation's late from Josh Hart, and he knocks down a three. So I guess I would say Malik Beasley on that end. But let me ask this. I'll start with XJ on this one. And you might have said this already. I just want to, it's part of the segment. If there was a Detroit weakness, whether offense or defense, what would you, if you're the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau, what would you exploit?
Oh, I would say that they have no one else to beat you besides Cade Cunningham. That is the only offensive player that has a hope to do damage against the Knicks. The Pistons literally can't go anywhere without Cade taking them. Something else I don't know that people realize, maybe they do, Cade Cunningham is the most heliocentric player in the entire league. That means he has the highest offensive load. He's responsible for the most points that his team scores. He ended the season at a 32.6 usage rate, which is 98th percentile in the league, and also had an assist percentage of 40.9%, which is 99th percentile in the league. Brunson doesn't hit either of those marks, despite we know how crazy his offensive load is. Brunson is not on par with how much Cade is responsible for that offense. On top of that, if you think about that much usage, you're like, okay, well, he must be going crazy in isolation. He must be doing... He's actually only 48th percentile in isolation efficiency. And on pull-up threes, he's only shooting 33.8% on pull-up threes. So it's like, how is he beating you? How is he doing so much? It's because when you bring two to the ball, when you play and drop and you play pick and roll defense against Cade, where it gives him a head of steam going downhill, he will destroy you. Like that's it for you. It's like good night for you. So all you have to do is slow Cade down. Don't let him get a head of steam to the rim with great court vision and be able to dice you up, throwing amazing passes to the guys that we talked about, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, guys that are elite shooters on the perimeter and from the corners, and throwing lobs to Jalen Duren and doing all those things that he does, throwing lobs to Sar Thompson for that matter. All you have to do is slow Cade down without overcommitting to him, and the Pistons can't score. So that's the biggest weakness for the Pistons to me.
Dylan, would you happen to be in line with what XJ was saying, or do you have another weakness that you'd like to explain? Again, defense or offense, doesn't matter.
I mean, XJ's on point because, I mean, Cade Cunningham is like Detroit's main threat. And as you just, pointed out, he has the usage of like basically the entire team. the percentiles up in the 98 and 99%. I mean, he's basically the team. And we saw how bad Detroit has been in the past few seasons, even with Cade on the floor. So obviously that means Cade had to take on a much bigger load this year. And look, it ended up making him win more games, but now they're tasked with a Knicks team that has a ton of talent. So, the Knicks need to be able to game plan that and realize, okay, if we stop Cade, then we got this. Because, yes, the Pistons have solid role players. Yes, as everyone has said, Jalen Duren, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, et cetera, et cetera. They have good role players. But we all know Cade Cunningham is the one guy you have to stop. He is their top scorer, their top playmaker, all that. He is basically their top everything. If you stop Cade Cunningham, you're in very good shape. I know last year the Knicks did, the teams had game planned against Brunson and they made sure that he wasn't going to end up putting 40 on him every game, but Brunson still did it anyway. He still was putting 40 on him, even with all the double teams and all that stuff and all the injuries we faced and all that good stuff. Brunson was still cooking these teams. So we know that Brunson is going to be crafty and get his buckets each and every way. We know that they're going to still score at a high level, especially now with Karl-Anthony Towns here and OG Anunoby taking his leap and all that stuff. So I'm not worried about the offense for the Knicks. I think their offense is going to be great. I expect it to be great at least. I would like to think it's going to be good, especially with everyone now healthy. We're not missing any pieces this time around. And really, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to the defense, as we've been saying. If the Knicks played the right way on defense, as XJ was saying, don't always commit to the drop. Actually, pick up on the pick and rolls, navigate through the screens, all that stuff. Don't leave the corners wide open for Beasley to hit 7 threes like he did earlier this year against us. If you don't let that stuff happen, you're in good shape. And I know it's easier said than done to just stop that because, Detroit's going to make sure that they can attack that and make sure they actually get their buckets and face whatever defense is being thrown at them, kind of adjust to that. But the Knicks need to be able to actually adjust. I know the Knicks sometimes kind of like to run a straight line system, whether on offense and defense. They kind of just run the same method and just hope for a different result. I want to see adjustments this time around. And I have confidence that they will adjust this time because now these games actually matter. This isn't just the regular season where, like I said, where I felt like they were kind of just coasting. I feel like this time you have to actually, adjust to what's in front of you. And I think really what's in front of you this time is just simple as this. Slow down Cade Cunningham, as we've been saying. If you slow down that guy, I don't really know how you lose this series. If you lose this series and Cade Cunningham has a bad series, we have other conversations to entertain.
That'd be a big problem.
Massive problem. If Cade Cunningham has a bad series and the Knicks still end up fizzling out, we have some very interesting convos to have in the offseason, and I don't want to entertain that at all. I want to just take care of business against these guys, because even if Cade Cunningham does get his buckets, even if he does average 30 points and 8 assists or whatever he might average this series, I still think the Knicks should handle these guys in 5 games. I firmly am confident in that. They should still handle them. The Knicks have far more talent and far more pieces to really compete with these guys. I think the Knicks should handle this. I know a lot of people have been saying that, it is a tough matchup. I know Donald was saying it's not the ideal matchup. I don't disagree. I think that Detroit does have a lot of physicality and stuff like that. But I do think this is better than playing Milwaukee, because even though we crush Milwaukee in the regular season, Milwaukee has Giannis, okay? Cade Cunningham is great, but he is not Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I don't know if I wanted to deal with Giannis in the first round. I'm just being honest, okay? We've seen Giannis go on crazy playoff runs before, and it led to a title. It led to a title because of that. So I'm not saying obviously he would have done that again, because I know he's missing Damian Lillard right now, so it's basically just Giannis and then a bunch of role players around him. But still, Detroit is basically Cade Cunningham and a bunch of role players too. So who are you picking here? You want to face Cade Cunningham or Giannis? I'm taking Cade 10 times out of 10. I'm just being honest. And I know Cade is very good, but I think that should be the obvious answer. You have a, all NBA level player versus an MVP. So that's where I stand on all that stuff. I know I kind of said a lot and kind of went off course a little bit, but still I think my points stand. I want to pass it off to Donald, though, and let him kind of get his thoughts on that, because I know I kind of disagreed with your point about, the ideal matchup thing, and I want to hear what you guys say about that. I'm honestly interested.
Well, I mean, I think obviously you should choose between Cade Cunningham and Giannis. It's not even a question. But I don't really like the Bucks team this year, and there's a reason for that. We destroyed them, and I like the Pistons role players. I know they're just role players, but I like them. They're young, they're athletic, they've got nothing to lose. And sometimes that could be a scary prospect in the playoffs. But I still fully expect us to win because we've got far more offensive weapons than they do. It's crazy. I'm not the biggest Bridges fan, but Bridges alone should be able to cook most of them if he's actually like if he wakes up this series, he should be able to cook them. Cat can cook them on his own. Brunson can cook them on his own. So we've got the offensive weapons. OG is an absolute monster. Big OG fan. So yes, absolutely. That's what we take advantage of. We have got a bunch of guys that can cook, not just Brunson. And that's all the Pistons have. They've just got Cade Cunningham that can cook. But certainly, as I mentioned before, the way to mitigate their threat is to rotate as a unit and make sure that Beasley doesn't go off because Beasley can get hot, as I mentioned, especially in the corners. So that's certainly something to pay attention to because you're right. Cade Cunningham is their major threat. So the way I mitigate that is I have OG Anunoby as the on-ball defender on Cade Cunningham. I want OG on Cade. I don't want Bridges on Cade. I want OG on Cade. OG's got the size, the wingspan that could limit Cade's physicality and his ability to foray into the paint, which all Cade will want to do. He will want to try and foray into the paint. If we get plenty of minutes with OG as the primary defender on him, switch OG on him, and I think that would work out. And obviously, I mentioned before Mitchell Robinson. It's quite a difference because per craftednba.com, once again, I'm going after Mikal Bridges. Mr. On-ball defender here is in the 43rd percentile in crafted defensive plus minus. That's our on-ball defender. Well, whereas OG Anunoby is in the 85th percentile. I want OG being the primary defender on their best player, and I think that would pretty much stop 90% of their offensive weapons. Mitchell Robinson back there should be able to stop the lobs going in for Duran and Stewart, etc. So that's what as I said before, that's how you do it. It's kind of easy, really. It wouldn't take much. It's not going to take a coaching mastermind. You put your best defender on their best player, and you put you put your giant 7-foot center beside another 7-foot dude, and that should be able to stop their strength in the paint. It's not going to take too much of like genius mastermind coaching, but Tibbs does need to show. Here's something that this is something that we didn't mention. How bad have the Knicks been all year long from the inbounds? They have called the worst plays. They don't call any plays whatsoever. I don't exactly know what, and I'm a Tug Tibbs fan, but what does he do other than bark during timeouts? Because nothing gets drawn up. It's just like give the ball to Brunson and pray. I mean, that's it.
Or like when we gave it to Josh Hart in crunch time the other night against Boston.
It's a disaster. I watch around the league, and the coaches are managing to scheme guys open all the time from inbounds, and Tibbs doesn't do it. And I don't know how, because he's got a bunch of versatile players. So that needs to change, and I'd like to see that change in the playoffs.
It's because Tom Thibodeau is very firm on what he runs. He's very firm on his rotations. He's very, he runs very linear. He doesn't like to make adjustments. It's just who he is. It's been his coaching style pretty much his whole career. Yeah. That's just who he is. It's something that like Knicks fan that like a lot of people kind of just need to embrace, unfortunately. And when it's all said and done, I think all three of us here have clamored for adjustments to be made. You just did a moment ago. I said it in my point. I think XJ was saying the same stuff. Everyone here wants adjustments to be made. But if we're looking at reality here, the starting five on Saturday is going to be what the starting five has been, and rotations are going to be pretty linear. We're going to see Deuce McBride and Robinson primarily coming off the bench, and maybe if we're hopeful, I see a good amount of Landry Shamet. But we'll talk more about the bench as we get into the next point. But I just wanted to interject in on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's not about like ganging up on Thibodeau, because I know his strengths and I know his weaknesses.
No, yeah, absolutely.
But what I would say is, as a coach, I was a little disappointed that he didn't amend his coaching philosophy for the personnel, because this is a very modern team that we've put together this year. The team we had last year was far more for Tom Thibodeau, and we excelled. And I loved that team. I would have run through a wall for that team last year. It was a perfect team for the city, and a perfect team for Tom Thibodeau because it was a really hard-nosed, tough, physical team that'll come at you. This team is more, they're trying to match up with the Celtics kind of a team. They've made a lot of philosophical changes, obviously sacrificing some defense for more offense this year. And I don't think Thibodeau really amended his coaching, especially on the offensive end, because we didn't see, for instance, much of like a Brunson Cat teamwork, really. We didn't really see much of that. I think that was something that really should have been emphasized. And it's very obvious that Bridges decides that if he's the fourth option, that he can't really be bothered on the offensive end because he's not that active. So it's important to get him involved early, because if he's involved early and his shot's fallen, then he's far more aggressive on the defensive end. It just kind of depends on. So that's something that we need to do a much better job of, is to call plays to get him involved early, to get his shot falling early, and then it translates on the defensive end with Bridges. That kind of aggressiveness. Same with OG. You kind of want to make sure that OG gets involved early too. The Knicks need to do a better job of that, and they just didn't really do that enough. You kind of want to see that. So, and that's not just on Tibbs. It's kind of on Brunson as well. And I'm not calling out my man. Like, I freaking love that man, but you kind of want to make sure that your guys the other role players get involved early, so that kind of they get hot at the right time. So those are kind of things that I would like to have seen, and especially on the defensive end. I don't know. Tibbs is just so reliant on the drop coverage. I think they could have done a little bit more because we were so bad defensively for long stretches before Mitchell Robinson came back. But these are kind of the things that I really wanted to have seen from Tibbs. So that's something that will need to be worked on, because the eyes are on Thibodeau now. If they have a bad series against the Celtics, I fully expect them to get through the Pistons. If they have a really bad series against the Celtics, then Tibbs is on the hot seat. And he might need to bring in an assistant that could maybe more of a modern assistant that could maybe help him in certain ways where he's a little deficient. I don't know if that's a huge statement to make. I don't know, but I think that's pretty fair. Because for those reasons, that's why I was a little bit down on this team this year. Felt that they underachieved in those areas, and that makes me worry about their ceiling. But I still think that they're too good for the Pistons. As for the Celtics, they just don't look like they can compete.
So what I'll say on that front is it was funny because Donald was talking about optimizing certain strengths, and I was just about to break into that. If I'm exploiting a Detroit weakness and making it a strength, and XJ, it was either XJ or Jeff on Hot Hand Theory who did it on the X page. They did a great job. They talked about consistently how the Knicks have not optimized Cat's three-point ability this year. It's down from previous years, and it's a matter of coaching. It's a matter of Brunson not recognizing that Cat is popping to the three-point line at times, and you just recognize it's too late, where the defense ends up rotating. Or it's Cat, sometimes rolling into open space where he's going for a mid-range jumper instead of rolling to the paint or getting to the three-point line. Yes, I believe there should be balance where Cat gets his rolls to the paint, or where Cat gets to the three-point line and knocks down the three-pointer. Even then, when he gets into the paint, he also has a penchant, I'd say the whistle's about 50-50, if I'm going to be honest. With Cat, he can get to the free throw line. He's going to knock down free throws. Imagine having a Nick big man that can knock down his free throws. Karl Anthony Towns, I think he's like 84% from the free throw line. And the Knicks are like the 100. I'm trying to read up on the stats because I got the roll man stats of the pick and roll. Cat is a 78.5% percentile, 1.25 possession points per possession with the pick and roll. With Cat as the big man, by the way. So if I'm, go ahead. Dylan,
I want to jump in and say why I think the 3-point thing is down for Cat. bringing in Cat's an identity change for the Knicks. They're used to having, interior bigs like Mitchell Robinson and other big men. They haven't had a 3-point shooting big. Tom Thibodeau has not coached a 3-point shooting big other than Cat earlier on in his career. But my point is, he usually had like guys like Joakim Noah and stuff like that earlier in his career. Mitchell Robinson the first time around, before Cat came along and all that. It's an identity change. They're not used to having a 3-point shooting big, and Tom Thibodeau's schemes are more meant for an interior big, which is why I personally have clamored so much for Mitchell Robinson to start because of that reason, because Tom Thibodeau really likes his interior centers. Obviously Cat is probably the greatest 3-point shooting big we've seen. If it's not Nikola Jokic, it's Cat. So, with that being said, it's like I said, it's identity change. It's something completely different. It's something that the Knicks franchise themselves are not used to, but Tom Thibodeau isn't even fully used to. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big reason why the 3-point volume and the 3-point stuff is down on Cat. And I think people blame Cat for that. But personally, I think that's a scheme thing. I think Tom Thibodeau's schemes are more meant for interior centers, not 3-point shooting bigs. I think that's just how it is. And I understand if people want to blame Cat for that. But at the end of the day, I think, again, it's the coaching. That's why. Because they are so primarily focused on pick and rolls to the basket instead of pick and pops on offense. And on defense, of course, playing the center inside, not in the perimeter. It's really that's really what I think the reason is. Obviously, there could be completely other reasons for it. But from what I have witnessed after seeing 82 games of Karl-Anthony Towns in the New York Knicks uniform, that's what I have noticed.
I totally agree. I was just going to jump in real quick because I totally agree with you, Dylan. I think that's the reason. I think it's schematic. Karl-Anthony Towns is currently at his lowest 3-point volume since 2018. Do we know who coached Karl-Anthony Towns in 2018?
Tom Thibodeau.
So
Thibodeau.
This is a schematic issue to me. As when he's not been coached by Tibbs, he's been over 5-6 threes per 75 possessions. At some points 8 threes per 75 possessions. Now he's around 4. So to me that's very schematic. It is what they are drilling this team to do, is to roll to the basket. Tibbs, I know, loves Karl-Anthony Towns rebounding. And in my opinion, he became infatuated with his rebounding. He's a very strong rebounder. Right now, he's incredible
in rebounds this year.
He's incredible as a rebounder. 99th percentile defensive rebounder, 88th percentile offensive rebounder. I think he wants him crashing the basket. I think he wants him in the paint. Tibbs wants points in the paint. He wants a physical, tough team, and he just doesn't have that roster like right now, And to Donald's point, he much preferred, I'm sure Tibbs much preferred the roster he had last year. The roster he had last year was much more of a match for the way that Tibbs wants to play, with Hartenstein banging inside and Mitchell Robinson when he's healthy banging inside, and even Julius Randle fighting inside. Like, that's the style that he wants. Josh Hart, all these guys who are crashing, who are tough, who are
DiVincenzo fighting through screens all the time.
Dante fighting around screen. That's the squad that Tibbs really wants to coach, and he just has a different personnel this year. He has Mikal Bridges as a finesse player. He has Karl-Anthony Towns, who's a finesse player. And to me, you bring these guys in, and I don't know what you expected. They are not going to change to be different players. They're going to be who they are. Tibbs already coached one of them, as I mentioned. And it's tough to try to change them and have them be different, as opposed to changing your scheme to match who your player is, who your personnel is. You're trying to change your players to match what your scheme is. And I think that that's problematic. And one of the biggest reasons why, Donald, you said you like Tibbs a lot. I don't know where the rest of you guys stand. I'm out on Tibbs as the head coach for the Knicks in terms of bringing them to win a title in New York. That is, I don't anticipate that happening.
See, can I jump
my
in
viewpoint on Tibbs? I'll let Donald go first because I've been speaking.
What I'm going to say is I do appreciate Tibbs as a coach. I think he's one of the elite coaches in the league and most respected. And I think what he's done for this organization has been underrated by certain members of this fan base. It's certainly not me, because I've been around long enough to see the really awful teams horribly coached, and he's not a horrible
Donald
coach.
got to watch Jared Jeffries play basketball.
Exactly. Lou Amundsen, or Lou Almond Milk, I call him. But so I do respect that. However, I do believe that he's had a bad year coaching. I will say that. I was kind of skirting around it, but I will be a bit
It's
more
definitely
firm.
his worst year coaching since 2022. I mean, I don't think anything will defeat the 2022 because that was terrible. But this year, considering the level of talent, easily his worst year in terms of like coaching a contender, if you want to
He's
call it a
not
contender.
he's not amending his philosophy for the personnel, and that's why I just didn't understand why we made such big moves to be more modern. If you're going to have an old school coach
Yep.
whose whole philosophy is predicated on a shot blocking five, and he just didn't amend that when we didn't have Mitchell Robinson. So I felt that he was misusing certain his personnel a little bit at times, and I do believe that this is his worst year coaching, and I was really frustrated about that. So that's why I'm saying he is on the hot seat if we don't really show up in the playoffs, because we might need to be looking at a more modern coach. But that's why I brought up the idea of maybe an assistant, which is more of a modern, younger, analytically driven offensive mind as a coach that can maybe help him move towards.
Not Rick Brunson.
No, because I don't really know what he's there other than vibes. No disrespect, but I think that's something that we're kind of missing. So either that, or we completely remove him and then we bring in a new coach. Certainly, the league has been firing some great coaches this year, so there's not going to be any shortage of coaches that we could choose from if we decided to go that route. So that is something that we need to do. But that's why I really want to see him go with Mitchell Robinson at the 5, because then that'll suit his defensive scheme, and then Cat can do his thing at the 4. Because he's not really made the most of Cat. And it's a shame because Cat's had a really good year. Been great. But could you imagine with better coaching and better schematics that and maybe more of an effort to get him involved early in his right favorite spots, Cat would have probably won the MVP this year.
Absolutely. Dylan, you had something to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I was really going to say was just like, it's ironic when you look at like Cat's numbers, because if you look at his base numbers, they're essentially like the best in his career. He's had some really good seasons in his career, but he's up there nearly his career high for points. It's not quite his career high, but it's pretty close. A career high in rebounds by almost by a pretty wide margin, honestly. And the assist numbers went up this year. The efficiency was on point. So if you look at that, you go, oh well, he had a fantastic year. He was shooting the ball, this, that. But if you actually see what was going on, he was taking a lot more drives, a lot more, trying to attack the basket a lot more, which isn't always a bad thing for a 7-footer. You kind of want your 7-footer to be active inside, but we know Cat's strength is a little different than that. Cat's strength is 3-point shooting. He's deadly from outside. You got to utilize that, man. And as Donald said too, get him active early. There were too many games this year where I felt like he was kind of frozen out early, and then he was basically just shut down from start to finish. Too many games where I look at the box score and I see that he attempted 2 3-pointers out of like the 14 shots he put up. And I'm like, that's not really okay for Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, for any other center, you'll live with that. For Cat, you need him shooting threes. You need him doing that because, I mean, when he was shooting threes, look how great the spacing was. The spacing was phenomenal. And I don't think Cat is the main reason for the spacing problem. I think that's more on Josh Hart. But when Cat isn't taking threes either, that just makes it even worse. It makes it 10 times worse when your best 3-point shooter is not taking threes, when your best 3-point shooter is in pick and rolls instead of pick and pops, or if he's not, ready to spot up in the wings or the elbows, whatever, and he's just dashed into the basket, which again, there's a pro and a con to that because your 7-footer going to the basket is what a lot of people want. I think a lot of people should want that because he's your tallest guy. But at the same time, this is a different player. This is a guy who's a very unique player. You don't see many 7-footers with such a great 3-point shooting ability that Cat has. You got to take advantage of that. You have a luxury on your team, a guy who is unbelievable from outside. Take advantage of that and get him involved from there. That's what they need to do. And I think if they do manage to do that in this, not even just in the Pistons series, but throughout the playoffs, then they look like a completely different team. They'll look like what they looked like at points throughout the year where we felt like they could beat anybody. When they absolutely smashed the Denver Nuggets twice, smashed the Memphis Grizzlies twice, smashed the Milwaukee Bucks 3 times. We'll see like more of like that team versus the teams that we saw against Cleveland, Boston, and OKC and all those other teams. So that's really where it comes down to. That's all I wanted to say, though.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it comes down to two things. First of all, this was mentioned by Shaq's NBA, and he does a great job with the film and all that. I don't know necessarily who he works for, but it's a great job regardless. He said that Tibbs is more in favor of like individual shot creators creating for the offense, like Jalen Brunson, like Julius Randle was big in that department.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to entertain this now because we're not in the offseason yet. That's why the Kevin Durant rumors people have coming up with. Like, is Kevin Durant a better fit than Karl Anthony Towns? And obviously, as I said, I'm not getting into that, but the individual shot creator that Kevin Durant is and how much gravity, he can have on an offense where he has a lot of players come to him where he can just where he creates open shots for his other teammates. That's what Tibbs likes. He's not really a guy like advantage creation kind of goes two ways. Everybody thought and this was including myself, I'm guilty of this thought process too, that, shot creation, advantage creation was all about dribbling into the paint into a double team and finding perimeter shooters. No, it's also about having a big man like Karl Anthony Towns beyond the 3-point line where he could stretch out, where he could take away the opposing team center and have guys cut right into the paint for easy buckets. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, also part of advantage creation that people miss sometimes. But also, I think another way to optimize Karl Anthony Towns' 3-point ability, and Schwinpoom from the Strickland mentioned this as well, great content creator and does some great stuff. Run more 5-out lineups, for Christ's sake. If you're trading for Karl Anthony Towns, yes, there's going to be lineups where you put Mitch on the floor with Karl Anthony Towns. I'm totally in favor of that. And I was originally somewhat a little pessimistic about that because of the spacing. But you know what? It actually worked out in the end. I'm not going to lie to you. And it worked out a great bit. And I hope we use that in the playoffs. Whatever. If you have Karl Anthony Towns as your 5, you want 4 shooters next to him ideally. You don't trade for Karl Anthony Towns at the 5 to run a non-all 5 out because obviously most of the lineup this year has been Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Brunson. You have Josh Hart being left open on the perimeter where the Knicks have to include him in the actions as a screener where he has to have some sort of purpose. Otherwise, the weakest defender on the other team is going to leave him wide open. So that's the thing. Include more, and Donald might disagree with me. I know Dylan disagrees with me. XJ agrees. I'm sure he's going to agree with me because I even have one of his tweets bookmarked from earlier this season where it said start Deuce McBride over Josh Hart. Bookmark it if you agree. And I've been on that plane, or I should say I've been on that train. But include more starting 5-out lineups. You don't trade for Karl Anthony Towns at the 5 just to go 4 out. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Real quick before we get the disagreements, which I welcome. I think this is a really good and important conversation. I just want to say there's been 316 total possessions this season where the Knicks have had 5 shooters on the court. So that's not specifically the starting lineup and Deuce or any. It's just 5 guys who are all very good shooters all at the same time on the court. There's only 316 possessions of those in the entire season.
Wow.
The Knicks are plus 15.2 per 100 possessions when there's 5 shooters on the court, no matter who they are, which is 98th percentile in the entire league. The offense scores 131 points per 100. And the defensive rating, we'd be like, well, the defense is going to really suffer because it's got all these shooters out there. The defensive rating is the exact same as the defensive rating of the 5 starters on the court. It is the exact same defense in terms of production, but the offense is through the roof. So it hasn't been done much, but when it has been done, it's dominated the league in those possessions.
Fellas, if you don't mind tagging in, and again, this is not a anti-Josh Hart argument. I said
I don't think so either. But go ahead.
But I think and Donald, I'm sure Dylan will mention this as well when it comes to Josh Hart. And listen, I value Josh Hart a lot. I love Josh Hart. I love his personality. I love his toughness. There are times where he complains about fouls, but I really don't care about that. But I just think at times where he's negatively impacting the spacing, and we talk about an all 5-out lineup, where Josh Hart's just a complete negative. Donald brought up his shot being broken for some of the season, where he's either handing off the ball to Jalen Brunson on the perimeter, which is fine. He's allowed to be in screen and roll actions. And you know what? Here's another thing. Weaponize Josh Hart rolling to the basket. Make him the roller. And that's not my idea. I just want to say that for the record. Make him a part of the actions. Make him involved on offense. But again, when Josh Hart's in the perimeter, sometimes he either fakes the dribble, drives to the basket, or he bricks it, or he – should I say, I think it was against the Cavaliers, actually, where he, traveled Like he hesitates, man. Like shoot with confidence, brother.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Dylan, if you have any thoughts.
This is what I'll say about it. Obviously, Luca, you remember way back when we did our preview for the season, I was
Yes.
saying to keep Josh Hart in the starting five. I'm sure you remember that because I was very adamant about that. And, I think that he is impactful in a number of ways. Obviously, he's our second best rebounder. He's a very good playmaker, all that stuff, right? He's good in transition. He's a great finisher. That's great. But as the season goes on, I think he took that servant role that he kept mentioning a little too literal, because there are too many times where he would be wide open and he just wouldn't shoot it. The amount of times that he'd be open and he's got his eyes looking this way instead of this way, and I'm like, shoot the ball. You were wide open. When PJ Tucker was yelling in his ear against Sacramento, he was shooting the ball. I don't know what happened after that, because it seemed like a one-off thing. He stopped shooting the ball after that. He went back to kind of just, looking for handoffs and stuff, which if certain designs are meant for a certain guy to have a different shot, whatever. But if you're wide open, bro, just let it fly. You got to force that center that is on you to get out of the paint, because even if you do miss the shot, you have the center out of the paint. So now Cat can go in and get that rebound, or whoever the big man is on the floor at the time can get those offensive rebounds, give us second chance opportunities or good looks inside for putbacks, because you have a mismatch now. You got to make them actually respect your shot. We saw last year in the postseason when Hart was actually taking shots, teams had to respect him, and he made them pay when they weren't respecting him. Look at the game against Philly, Game 6 last year. They left Hart wide open on that three to win the game, and he drilled it, and they ended up winning the series off of that. Obviously, that's just one example, and there's many other times where he's done stuff like that. But my point is, when he actually is shooting the ball, and he's if he's making it, of course, teams are going to have to respect it. They're going to have to change their matchups on it. They have no choice. But when Hart is just looking to, pass it off or hand it off to someone else, why even guard him at that point? Why even bother? You can literally just throw two bodies at Jalen Brunson or two bodies at Cat if he's the one going off that game. And at that point, your offense is frozen, because you essentially have a zero on the court. There was this one thing I noticed too. Remember how I mentioned the Boston game from last week when Hart put up that shot at the buzzer, which, one of the things I said, I even put on Twitter, was, one, why was he even on the floor? I don't think he should have been on the floor that possession. I think Deuce McBride should have been on the floor, or even any of the other shooters that we have, like Shamit or any of them. Anybody that can actually shoot the ball should have been on the floor, not Josh Hart. But that is besides the point. What I noticed too, there was about like 2.9 seconds left or something like that. Hart gets the ball in the inbound. What was the first thing he tried to do? Hand it back off to Bridges. That was the first thing he tried to do. He tried to do that first, and he didn't have the handoff. It was shut down. They ball denied. They ball denied, and he was forced to heave up a contested, wing three, and he missed it. They obviously end up fizzling out in overtime. I'm not saying that they were going to definitely win the game off of a 2.9 second inbound play, but you would have had a better chance if you actually had someone who was willing to shoot the ball instead of Josh Hart. Because honestly, once Josh Hart put that shot up, I knew it wasn't going in. He doesn't shoot contested threes. He doesn't shoot those fadeaway shots or anything like that. He's not a creator for himself. He even said it himself. He's a servant for the rest of the guys. And in a way that can be good because you provide playmaking and all that. But sometimes, man, we just need you to score. We need you to score. And with that being said, if he isn't going to, shoot the ball enough times, then where's the rationale behind not playing Deuce a whole lot? Where really is that? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go ahead and say, yes, definitely bench Josh Hart. I'm not going to say that just yet, just because I do think he's still impactful in a number of different areas. And he does, he's impactful for the starting five because of what he does in those areas. But I do want to see more Deuce McBride just in general, whether he's coming off the bench or not. I want to see more Deuce McBride. And as XJ said, more shooters, because clearly the numbers do not lie. When the shooters are on the floor, they end up scoring and they outscore their opponents by a lot. And I think that's really kind of just the modern NBA. And I think that goes back to Tom Thibodeau kind of not being really caught up with that just yet. He's still a bit of an old school style coach. As I said, he's used to the rim running bigs instead of the shooting bigs. You have a shooting big and you're not even utilizing the shooting out of him as much as you could be. So there's a number of different things, but to kind of just wrap up my point with it, I think Josh Hart will end up staying in the starting five throughout the playoffs. I do. I just don't see Tom Thibodeau benching him, especially just because of how enamored Tom Thibodeau is with Josh Hart. But with that being said, I do just want to see more shooters more often, whether that means benching Hart more often than you really want to, because we all know Josh Hart's probably going to be playing like 45 minutes every playoff game, just because that's how much Tom Thibodeau likes him. That's how much he feels he has an impact on the court. he's going to end up playing very similar minutes. Maybe he won't be playing all 48 for 7 straight games like he did last year because we don't have that same injury situation at the moment, but he's still going to be playing the bulk of the minutes. But if he's going to play the bulk of the minutes, you got to make sure you're adjusting when you're noticing that the shooting is off or that you're not getting a lot of points on the board. Put your shooters on the floor. And if that means putting Hart on the bench for a few minutes, please do it. You got to do it because we, at the end of the day, defense obviously I feel still wins championships, but Hart's an undersized player. So what really difference is it going to make if you have Deuce out there? Is it really going to be making that much of a difference? I don't think so. I think you're trading off for better shooting. Maybe you're sacrificing some rebounding and playmaking a little bit, but you'll still have Brunson out there for the most part. You'll still have the other guys out there that can get the job done too. We're not asking McBride to be the number one option on the floor. We just need a guy that will actually force teams to respect their shot, to respect all 5 guys on the court and not just leave one guy open. That's really all I got to say. I want to give Donald an opportunity to hop in on that.
Well, it sounds like you're underrating Josh Hart, man. I mean, Josh Hart is very valuable. In fact, he's far more valuable than Mikal Bridges.
Man. Luca knows very well how highly I spoke about Hart to start.
No, right. It's just because you were
disagrees
saying that
with me. He's on your
saying
side,
that the reason why he's going to play a lot of minutes is because Tibbs loves him. But the reason why Tibbs loves him is because he's been even if you look at his crafted NBA, let's share it on the screen, right? I'll try to see if I can share it because it really kind of indicates like how important he is. Right, here we go. Let's share this out, right?
All right.
Just look at this. I mean, crafted offensive plus minus 83rd percentile, defensive 82nd percentile. It's versatile 80th percentile, rebounding 92, offensive rebound 90th percentile. Even his true shooting's even up there in the 81st percentile. Look at his deflections. So he's constantly getting in the passing lanes, 67%. I like that. He's far more valuable than Mikal Bridges. So if I want plenty of Deuce, I would put Deuce instead of Mikal Bridges. I would say that because I think Josh Hart is the X factor of this series because he limits a lot of the things that the Pistons are really good at. The Pistons love to get out and run. Josh Hart can help stop that by gobbling up offensive rebounds, being versatile, getting out there in the passing lanes. But he is a weakness in terms of his three-point shooting and stuff. So that's why I do agree with Luca. Luca's point is spot on. Let's try and see if we can get him attacking the basket because that's where he's at his best. And his playmaking. Just as long as he takes advantage of his skill set, then he is very valuable. That's why he had so many triple doubles this year. It was like a career year for him for triple doubles. And in fact, it was right up there in terms of our franchise list. So that kind of stuff shouldn't be underrated. I just kind of wish that we had maybe a more analytically driven coaching staff that could help Thibodeau to emphasize his talents rather than emphasize the things that he's really weak at. He's not a spot-up three-point shooter. I don't really want him doing that. But if I get him attacking the basket, rolling to the basket, constantly moving, playmaking, that could maybe help get Brunson open so Brunson doesn't have to do everything himself, that would be kind of valuable. So just if you look at that just alone, it just shows like what he offers both on the offensive end and the defensive end. I still think that he's an X factor to this series because he kind of limits the kind of things that the Pistons are really good at. So that's my point.
Yeah. I just want to jump in real quick because I like Hart a lot, and some people think I dislike Hart, which I don't think anybody here would think that, but some people do, and I think he brings a ton of value. I think he's such an impactful player. Before the Knicks actually acquired Hart, I wanted him on the Knicks for a long time, and when they made the deal, I was one of the first people out there like, this guy is so good. He's perfect for Tibbs, all these things. So I really love Josh Hart as a player and a person. What I will say is Josh Hart is having a career year in part because he's benefiting from the spacing that that his teammates are providing. So he's benefiting from having his center, Karl Anthony Towns, be able to pull defenses away from the rim, and he is being the beneficiary as opposed to being the benefactor, which is what I say about Hart, right? Like I would want my role players to be able to help my star players kind of play better, elevate them, make them better players. When you have a guy like OG Anunoby, let's say, elite defensive player, also elite shooter from the corners. So now when you have Jalen Brunson attacking the basket, well, you can't leave OG Anunoby open because he's going to knock that shot down almost every single time. So now Brunson is able to kind of excel even more. With Josh Hart, now because you have the center kind of on Hart in a lot of cases, Detroit hasn't done that a ton, actually, to be honest. So it might not even come up in this series very often. But when you have that situation, Josh Hart is actually able to benefit because he has a ton of cushion, basically being unguarded. And when he's involved in the offense, when he's running the offense, let's say he's the pick and roll initiator or he's the pick and roll finisher, now he has an advantage in both of those scenarios because he has guys spacing for him at all times. So Josh Hart's numbers are going to kind of look really, really strong. And I think that's because he's an excellent player. I especially love what he does in transition. That is my favorite part of Josh Hart's game. At the same time, I want Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns to be the guys that benefit the most. And when Deuce McBride is on the court, those two guys benefit from Deuce McBride as opposed to Deuce McBride benefiting from those two guys. And so that's kind of the trade-off. Again, I love Josh Hart. I want him to play a ton of minutes. I don't want him playing 45. I don't want him playing 40 or 45. I want to scale that back to a normal amount. And also, I love Mitchell Robinson in there for Josh Hart because he offers a ton of the things that Josh Hart offers in terms of his rebounding, but he offers other things too in terms of defense, rim protection. He's an even better offensive rebounder, obviously one of the elite offensive rebounders of all time. So to me, you get a lot of the advantages that you get from Josh Hart when Mitch is on the court. And then when Deuce is on the court, you get different advantages. So all three have their benefits of having them. And so I wouldn't say just get rid of one and only have one of them play in that role. But I just think there are some trade-offs to consider depending on how the defense is playing them. In this case with Detroit, I don't think they're going to play Josh Hart in the same way that we've seen the Boston Celtics do. So I don't think it'll come up too much in this series. But against Boston, this is going to be a topic of conversation for sure because Boston will play Josh Hart in this way. And it will affect the Knicks offense. And we all know if you can't score with Boston, you're not going to beat them. So I think it's going to be a bigger issue in the future. Right now, I think it's fine, but that's just kind of my overarching perspective there.
You're right. Boston's coaching is next level.
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
It's like on another level.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Tibbs is a better coach than JB Bickerstaff. So I think I think the Knicks have the coaching advantage here against Boston. Sure. It's a different story.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of Barbara Carroll's comments? She's got a lot of good comments here.
Let's see. What's up, Barbara? Hi, Knicks made these changes to at least get to the conference finals, compete with Boston. Miss Big Ragu. And I think somebody put this on Twitter is really good. The one reason that the Knicks missed DiVincenzo, high volume 3-point shooting. Took him at a very high rate.
Absolutely.
And I like DiVincenzo, but I'm not one of those players that I'm not one of those people like, oh, I missed this player, but I like DiVincenzo. I have no problem with him. Cat got Tibbs fired. I don't think he'll do the same here. I think both parties have put that aside and they're working for the greater good of basketball, honestly. But you guys brought some great points up about Josh Hart. You had the Josh Hart argument for why he should be in the lineup, why he not should be in the lineup. Great variance of conversation. And actually, you guys are going to talk. I was about to say something about Tibbs tactically. Dylan brought up a great point about the end of the game, having Josh Hart in the lineup, in the closing lineup with the 2 seconds left. There's just some things that kind of tick me off with Tibbs tactically, that being one of them. The other thing was he better not pull off a scenario like he did against the Celtics where it was we were up 3 and we don't foul in the bonus when Tatum's about to take that 3. I get that OG Anunoby
it's terrible.
Great defender, but at the end of the day, I just want Tibbs to improve tactically. I get it. The regular season's a blow by. It's 82 games, but for him to take the next level as a coach, not just schematically, but tactically doing these little things, not just the players, but the coaches as well, he's got to take that next step, especially against these teams. Think a step ahead of the other team. Don't fall a step behind is my thing. But, great discourse overall. I think we're going to end it off here with our final predictions for the series. I think Dylan named his prediction already. Knicks in 5, Knicks in 6. But Dylan, you said Knicks in 5, correct? I want you to restate.
Yes, I did say Knicks in 5, and I'm firmly going to stick with that because I think I'll just get my point out now since it seems like that's what we're doing, predicting the series. So I'll just mention it now. I think it should be Knicks in 5 because, as from what I said earlier, this team is just so much more talented than Detroit. They have way more top options, more all-star talent, all that stuff. We can break it down into the the defense, the offense, the schemes, all that stuff. I think if you just look at it from a much simpler scale and you look at the two teams on paper and you compare their starting fives and their entire rotations, the Knicks rotation clears. Okay, it clears. Cade Cunningham is great. I'm not even trying to disrespect Cade Cunningham. And of course, their role players have stepped up this year. Jalen Duren's had a solid year. Asar Thompson's been an impactful player, as XJ mentioned. And of course, their other role players have been very good as well. They all contribute. But when you look at the Knicks up and down, they are just a better team. Jalen Brunson, MVP candidate. Karl Anthony Towns, MVP candidate when healthy. OG Anunoby, all defense level player. Mikal Bridges, I know he had an up and down year, but he is still a serviceable role player. Josh Hart, we just talked about him. Very impactful player. Their bench pieces that they're going to have this postseason, Deuce McBride, Mitchell Robinson, and whoever of campaign, Landry Shamet, whatever. They are a better team. Simple as that. They are a better team. You should handle business. Take care of these guys in 5. If it goes to 6, I won't get too concerned, but I will look at it a little bit. If it goes to 7, I'm very worried about the second round. I'll put it that way for you. If it goes to 7, I already am pretty low confident about the second round, just because we're probably going to have to play Boston unless Orlando somehow upsets them, which I just don't see happening. I don't think anyone should see that happening. But even so, my confidence for that is already low. But if we end up, facing Detroit 7 games, if it ends up being a dogfight, which I do expect it to be a very physical series, but I do think the Knicks should win every single one of those games. I do, or at least most of them. You drop one, but you should win most of them. You really shouldn't have an issue winning them. And if they do have an issue doing that and it goes to 7, I'm very worried. I'll be very worried. I'm just going to put it that way. And I'm not even trying to put Detroit on such a low scale like that.
Yeah.
But come on. The Knicks are simply a better team. It's that simple. So, yeah.
Donald?
Knicks in 5.
I probably agree. I think Knicks in 5, but I'll go Knicks in 6. But I think it won't be a scary 6. I think we'll blow the Pistons out more often than not over the series. So even if they do win, say, 2 of their games at home, because I think the Pistons do have they have a pretty good home court. Their fans are pretty passionate, pretty loud. So, maybe that helps them. I would say Knicks in 6, but it won't be a concern. I think we'll win the series fairly comfortably. We're just too good. And I said at the start of the show, I felt the Knicks are probably going to save the best for last. By and large, they've actually gotten kind of hot towards the end of this year, the Knicks. Like, they're trending for me. They're trending positively. I know that they blew it badly against the Celtics, but they were right there and just slightly more attention to detail, and they probably win that game. So for me, that they've actually played pretty well, and they did well towards the last week of the season. So maybe the Knicks are saving the best for last. I think they're going to ball out by and large against the Pistons, but I'm going to give the Pistons credit, considering they did win the head-to-head, that they're going to play well against us in 1 game, maybe 2. So I'm going to safely say Knicks in 6, but it's going to be a comfortable 6. Like, it's not going to be like, oh my God. I think we'll be okay. I think maybe go up 3 games to 1. Maybe the Pistons win the next one, and we take the care of them and after that. So I've got Knicks in 6, and I think it'll be fine. But our concerns that we've spent an hour and 28 minutes are far more prevalent for the Celtics than the Pistons. But it's no disrespect for the Pistons, because it's not an ideal matchup for us. But that's why I'd say 6, just to be kind of careful about it, because they kind of expose some of our weaknesses in transition. But there's no reason why the Knicks are just so deep if they utilize them. And I just want to make sure they utilize them. So I think they will too. So it's gonna be Knicks in 6.
XJ?
Yeah, I mean, for reasons that Donald and Dylan both said, I will also say Knicks in 5. I think they're just much more talented. I think that they have a much bigger margin for error. Like, I think I think the Knicks could play suboptimally and still win in 5 or 6 games. Like, I don't even think they need to bring necessarily their best scheming, their best, like, play from all their guys. I think they're just so much better from a talent perspective that I just think it's too much for Detroit to kind of hang with them. There are a couple of things I want to just throw in there as some caveats that we should pay attention to. One is that, my co-host on A Hot Hand Theory, Jeff, has talked about the fact that Detroit has played better overall than the Knicks since January 1st. So in 2025, since January 1st, New York Knicks, their net rating is plus 1.2, which is not very good, just a little bit better than their opposition. Detroit plus 5.2. Detroit has been very, very good in this calendar year, pretty consistently. I think that makes sense from the standpoint of Detroit is a team who is kind of up and coming. They're a bit ahead of schedule here. They're grinding it out. This last few months of the regular season is super important to them. Whereas the Knicks aren't in that same position. The Knicks are getting ready for the playoffs because they're trying to make a deep run. So there is some reasoning for that. But at the same time, the Pistons have played very well. The only way I could see the Knicks losing this series is if Cade does some superhuman, like turns into 2023 Devin Booker and is unguardable, is making step back threes, is dicing them up with his playmaking, just turns into some kind of, super ascension to a superstar level player. If that doesn't happen, I can't see the Detroit winning this series. And if they do, to Dylan's point, there's got to be some different kind of conversations than the ones that we had here tonight. So,
yeah, definitely. I'm gonna say Knicks in 6. It's gonna be. I think you'll really see this team's character, but you could say more so about that about the Celtics series. But I think this team is going to provide a bit of an adversity challenge for the Knicks. Again, I'm not saying that the Knicks are going to lose. I think the Knicks will win in 6, but the physicality aspect, again, Donald brought up moderate team. This is not really the Tibbs type, as we all have mentioned. More physical, more bruising. That was more last year's team. It's a character test. And I'm just saying for the record, I don't want guys like Mikal Bridges throwing out the Chapman smirk after he drops a ball out of bounds. I don't want to. If I see that game 2, I'm not going to be a happy person at the Garden. Just putting out the record.
The
just
Chapman
putting it out.
smirk. Oh my God.
He has a tendency to do that. Again, he's a finesse player, but you know what? I don't want to see that. New Yorkers don't want to see that. But overall, if you guys have any final thoughts, feel free to share them. But I'd like to thank every single one of these members of our All-Star cast coming on. XJ, thank you for coming on from Hot Hand Theory. Does a great job over there with Jeff Rasmussen. We had Jeff on for our season preview. We have Dylan Backer from Fireside Knicks. Does a great job. He and I always, most of the time, called the games. We get together for the playoff games as well. And then my brilliant co-host, Donald, from PFN and Let's Talk Knicks. But if you guys don't have any final thoughts, I'm going to close it up here.
I don't have much else to say other than I hope that this is the series I'm expecting, which is that we win this series in 5. And I just hope that, as I said earlier, and as XJ pointed out, that we don't have to have the really interesting convos that I really don't want to have to entertain in the offseason by losing, because I really don't want to have to come on live streams and say we need to fire Tom Thibodeau or that we need to trade Mikal Bridges or anything like that. I want to just root for my guys. I want these guys to succeed. I think these guys are well equipped to do it. And let's ride. It's that simple.
Absolutely. Let's ride. Again, thank you to my wonderful co-hosts. Thank you to my wonderful people in the chat who, if you were there. If you guys haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also turn on the notification bell so you know when I go live and drop a new video. Don't just subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to Fireside Knicks. I'm going to throw Pinch Up Chronicles in there as well. I know it's not Knicks, but it's Yankees, and that's where Donald does his best work. Also, Hot Hand Theory as well. Follow the guys on X as well. If you have a Twitter account, please support them. Please support me. We'll be back Saturday for Game 1 of the Pistons-Knicks series, quarterfinals, Game 1. But without further ado, folks, let's go Knicks. Catch y'all later. Peace.